Let me see, who else have I met? There's the Pincher,
Pincher?
the Pickler, Princess Headbutt, White Flight and the Black Menace. They work together.
Yeah, slow down.
Then there's Professor Pinkbelly and Lucky Pierre and the French Tickler.
French Tickler. And you say you've got all their telephone numbers?
Well, yeah, most of them.
You've got to figure out a way to get them all in one place.
That's quite right.
Some kind of a tryout.
Yes, a tryout.
Throwing a barbecue and a couple of kegs, they'll all show up. I mean, the moose factor's pretty high with this crowd.
Hello, and welcome to Comic Book Movie Oblivion, the podcast about feature films based on comic books and comic strips that people have stopped talking about. This week we are talking about Mystery Men from 1999. I'm your host, Kumar. My co-host is Jordan.
Hello.
I think I forgot to introduce ourselves last time.
Oh, you did, but that's okay.
Nobody emailed
I didn't have
me about
anything
it.
funny to say.
I didn't get any comments from anybody saying, who are these two people? So before we get to Mystery Man, we have to talk about Bob Burton's Flaming Carrot. So the very first appearance of Flaming Carrot was in 1979. Now, Flaming Carrot as a character is supposedly he's an existential poet who read 5,000 comic books in one sitting, and it drove him insane.
Right.
And he has a giant carrot head mask or something. His head is a big carrot.
It goes about a meter above his head.
Yep.
And right down to his ankles.
Yep, and he wears flippers on his feet.
He does, just in case he needs to swim.
Yes, and he says "ut."
That's his catchphrase.
U-T, ut.
Ut.
Exclamation point. Is his exclamation.
I did read an interview with Bob
Burton. Yeah.
where someone asked him about ut.
Okay.
Now, allegedly, he was watching a Beatles concert.
Okay. This makes sense already.
Yes.
This makes total Flaming Carrot sense.
At Shea Stadium.
Okay.
And there was a stage invasion, so some fans forced their way onto the stage.
Okay.
Security was trying to keep them out, and at one point, George Harrison pointed at a fan that had breached the barricade and said, "Ut."
Right.
Well, who knows?
Got it.
Because how is ut pronounced?
Right.
It's one of the great mysteries of the Flaming Carrot.
Right. That makes total sense.
So yeah, that was he just thought it was a funny utterance, and that's the Flaming Carrot's catchphrase.
Yeah.
Also
so,
zoot though, I believe he says zoot.
Yes.
As
That might be
well. Ut
right.
and zoot.
So it's I think I from the description of Flaming Carrot himself, you can probably guess what the comic is like. So it's black and white independent, and it was one of the, I would say, first wave of black and white independents that came about in the late 70s when the direct market of comic shops opened. And it kind of allowed small titles that were not huge multi-thousand sellers to actually find a market and be sold directly through comic shops. They didn't have newsstand distribution.
Great.
So there were a few titles here. There was like ElfQuest by the Peonies, and there was Cerebus.
Famous service.
Yeah, and this was after this was in the underground. The undergrounds were being sold in head shops. So this is kind of a slightly more mainstream.
It's not underground. Okay, so the difference between underground, I've heard this described as new wave.
I've never heard that term, but that makes sense.
Because it's distinct from underground,
but
because it's not being sold in what you call...
Yeah, it's not being sold in head shops, and it's not like all kind of like sex and violence and trippy stuff. It's not quite like that. It's like actual... Like ElfQuest was a straight-ahead fantasy comic.
Yeah.
It was just... but it was black and white. It was not being published by DC or Marvel. It was just being self-published by these people.
You know what I thought? You know where I saw many parallels with last week's comic, Tank Girl? Flaming Carrot reminded me quite a bit of Tank Girl.
Right.
In the sense that it was... So, the Flaming Carrot... It's not like nuts things happens in the Flaming Carrot, right?
Yeah.
He one of the comics that we read, he's interacting with the personification of death.
Yes.
Who gets drunk on strychnine and and makes someone's hand disappear for fun.
Yep.
And things like that. In another.
Yeah. And yet, I mean, last week I think I described it as Dadaist, which, rereading them, I've read some of them before, but reading the first couple of issues and the other issues that we read for this week, there's actually a narrative to them. There's actually a beginning, middle, and end. There's a storyline. There's villains. There's like something has to be defeated. But that thing is totally absurd. It's like Hitler's feet have been cloned, and they're just walking around in boots.
That's the introduction to the Mystery Men.
Yeah,
and so that's the main comic that we read for this podcast. So someone cloned Hitler's feet.
Yeah, and then they have to be defeated. Yeah, and then they assemble a team, and then there is a kind of. It's not completely.
The tone is not exactly the same, so it's not exactly like Tank Girl.
Right.
It has a very different feel, but it's similar in the sense that it's surreal.
Yes.
Wacky things are happening.
Yeah.
That aren't necessarily internally consistent within that universe. There's magic. In one episode, Flaming Carrot is brain-damaged lunatic. In another one, he has the superpower to talk down aliens and convince them not to invade the world.
Well, it isn't a power, because he just tells them, he just explains taxes.
Oh, he talks about taxes to them, that's right.
And that's how he gets rid of them. But he does have
with plungers.
He has an ability to, he can emit a sound made by carrots multiplied 1,000 times, which apparently sounds like disc brakes or Yoko Ono.
He's absurd.
Yeah, and then
it's absurdist, wouldn't you say?
And then some aliens hit people with a ray, which causes mass hiccuping, and the winged pickles start like orbiting around people's heads. Yep. Like this kind of stuff happens.
It's very silly.
Yes. But it survived through all that, much like Cerebus and ElfQuest went through. So in the 80s, we had a black and white boom and bust, which I think was like a 12-month thing. It happened after Mutant Turtles came out.
Yes.
And then suddenly there were a billion black and white comics on the shelves, including a lot of clones like radioactive black belt hamsters and stuff like that people were just cashing in.
I've heard of radioactive black belt hamsters.
And then it went away, and yet it kind of Flaming Carrot survived. It was actually published by Aardvark Van Heim. So he published the first issue, and then
that's how he got his start, I believe.
Yeah, well, his second. So he got picked up by Dave Sim, who was publishing Cerebus at Aardvark Van Heim. Then when the divorce with Denny happened, she took it to Renegade, and then Dark Horse picked it up, and we ended up with the Dark Horse movie this week, which I'd forgotten. This was another Dark Horse picture.
It is indeed.
And Mike Richardson's name is in the credits again.
Yes,
that was a bit of a surprise. There was a real shock in the credits, which I will get to.
Oh, good.
Shortly. Once we get through all this stuff. So what else? It's really hard to make notes on this. Right. So in issue 16 and 17, we're introduced to these other second string characters. They're called second string Milltown heroes that never made it to the JLA Avengers.
I wrote that down as well.
They're called the Mystery Men, and it's a flashback while Flaming Carrot is having a nap in a hammock. He has this dream flashback to, I guess, after the war.
Well, it's the mid-70s.
Right.
It's described later in issue 17 as the Mystery Men as being a rambunctious but ill-fated hero team of the mid-70s.
Right. And these issues came out in 87, 16 and 17. So some of the characters are the Shoveler, Mr. Furious, Red Rover, and my personal favorite was Jumpin' Jehoshaphat, who, as far as I can tell, just leaps around.
Yeah. Well, they don't. They have ill-defined powers.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yeah.
The shoveler obviously hits people with a shovel. Mr. Furious just seems a bit cranky.
He makes a weird comment the very first time he appears. What was it? It didn't seem like, it wasn't angry or anything. It was just like a random, I can't remember now.
Yeah.
But I love there's a bit where we see all the masterminds behind these clone feet where are they? They're at a barbecue. And one of them is called Melon Master, and he just hurls melons at people, but his suit's got like all these like bulging melons on it.
Yeah. They're just the opposite of the Mystery Men, essentially.
Yes.
They're evil counterparts. They have equally silly, trivial, nonsensical powers.
Yes. And then issue 17 really is just, it's a lot like Swingers. It's just the Mystery Men hanging out at bars, trying to find a better bar to go to, trying to pick up girls, failing, trying to come up with lines like sabotaging each other, all this kind of stuff. Yep. Flaming Carrot goes back to his hotel room with two girls, and they hear the noises and they're jumping on the bed.
Yep.
Like it's a trampoline. It's all like,
and he never takes off his mask. Well, can you
we
call
don't
it a
know
mask?
if it's a mask or not.
His elaborate headdress.
Yes. And also at the end of the issue, so some of them decide to go bowling. They're going to a bowling tournament. And at the end, all the bowlers show up with the bowling balls and attack the villains as well. They're when they have the big Olin, which reminded me a lot of the end of Avengers Endgame, actually, where everybody just shows up at once.
The big battle royale.
Yeah. And
so there is a narrative structure.
There is, yeah. And then Hitler's boots, like they're walking around in these boots, but then it rains, and then the boots drown in the boots, which the bad guys hadn't calculated for. Right. There's not really a lot of focus on the climaxes. That's kind of silly thing that happens. Yes.
You know, does a boot? You know, they cloned Hitler's foot. It's Hitler's foot. They're these kind of like how you independent. They just hop around and kick people.
There's my favorite bit was where some boots are hiding, so they're kind of like they're up against the wall, and they've pinned up like a mannequin's torso up above them on the hotel wall. So walking by, it looks like there's a person standing there.
So absurd.
But it's just
how did they pin the mannequin to the wall?
Sure.
Why would they bother hiding from the flaming carrot? Even.
Yes.
What's.
Yes,
it doesn't matter. There's lots of silly things like that.
And then when people show up at the end, there's a line which I wrote down, which is the boots lay dying and writhing in agony, which I thought was just hilarious.
How does a foot writhe?
Yeah,
it doesn't matter.
I just thought it was hilarious, just the concept of all of it. So Bob Burton didn't really consider himself an artist. He always thought about himself as a writer.
Okay,
but I'm gonna say that I think actually. So after the movie came out, there was a Mystery Men series that came out, written by Bob Burton, drawn by a quote-unquote legit artist.
Okay, so he wrote it but didn't draw it.
He wrote it but didn't draw it, and the same guy ended up drawing the movie adaptation, and I actually think it doesn't quite work.
Okay.
I think the art has to be bad. I think that's part of the package. I think when it's if the art's bad or it's kind of distracting somehow, or it's too much in the actual world and not in this weirdo universe.
It's a package. Yeah. Sure.
I think it's the right art for the stories the type of stories he's telling. And
it's quite different from Tank Girl. I'm going to be talking about Tank Girl a lot because I saw a lot of parallels. With this week with last week. It's like the art in Tank Girl is quite good.
Yeah, it's great, yeah.
Really good art. I really love reading it. Flaming Carrot's art, it's less polished. It's not in colour, obviously. It's in black and white.
Yeah.
But it's perfect for the kinds of stories that he's telling.
Yeah, I think that's it. And I think that's kind of where maybe we have a little bit of trouble with the movie. Maybe one of the problems with the movie is that it's real people. And there's some kind of disconnect there between the... Well, I think they've dialed down the absurdity. There's no Hitler boots.
Well, here's the thing. It's all... When I did some looking around on the net about the film Mystery Men, the words very loosely were always used in combination with the word adaptation.
Right.
And the Mystery Men... The Flaming Carrot's great, but the Mystery Men in Flaming Carrot is really just a bit of a gag. And I think it's a way for him to just have hero after hero after hero, who's each one is sillier than the last.
Yes, there is one scene in the movie, I think, that gets this, and it's the scene where Invisible Boy rattles off the names of all the other heroes he knows, and there's like Princess Headbutt. And the French Tickler, and the Black Menace and the White something, I can't remember, there was a pair.
So if you watch the film but can't read the comic, the Mystery Men comics are essentially the comic version of that gag.
Yes.
Just one silly name after another.
Yes.
With a silly power to go with it.
Yeah. Now I actually saw this movie at the cinema in 1999.
We're on to the movie now. Very good.
Yes.
You saw it at the cinema?
I was in San Diego. Now...
For Comic-Con?
I was in San Diego for Comic-Con. It was my second Comic-Con. I was living in Japan at the time, but I flew to San Diego. And, now this is kind of important.
I'm sure. Yep. Yes. Yes, I'm sure it is.
So, at that time, there was still like a 6-month delay before the movies would come over to Japan. So while I would hear about movies that had opened in the States, and I had I couldn't see them. I was like, I'm still waiting. It's another 3-4 months before it's released in Japan. It's almost like how we get foreign movies here. Like a movie comes out in France, and you got to wait a year before some distributor is like, oh yeah, this might sell in Australia, and we'll.
Oh yeah.
So it was very like that. So when I got there, I was like, I'm going to see as many movies as I can in this 1 week I'm in San Diego.
Brilliant.
And I saw The Sixth Sense.
It opened the same day as...
Well, it opened that week.
Same
yeah,
weekend.
maybe same weekend, same day or something. But it was the first run, so it didn't have the... In later prints of that, they added a title card, a message from Bruce Willis saying, this movie has a secret in it, please don't tell your friends.
Oh, I never saw that version.
And I had never heard of this movie. And I went in, and then the ending comes, and you're like shocked by it. Now, if you watch the movie, you're like, okay, what's the twist going to be?
It was his sled.
Yeah. It's like, what's the twist going to be? You're waiting for it the whole movie. You're warned that there's a twist when you watch it. Anyway.
So you saw
that. I saw Mystery Men. I saw South Park. The three I remember seeing at that time. Now I mentioned that because, according to Bob Burden, part of the problem was it was released at the end of the summer. Star Wars had come out, Episode 1, and people had come out and drove to see that. But he said Sixth Sense kind of killed it as well.
Sure. That was what I read as well.
But I saw Bob Burden at San Diego Comic-Con, and he commented that he did quite like the movie.
Sixth Sense or Mystery Men?
Mystery Men. He liked Mystery Men.
Well, everyone... I noticed that as well. When I was reading, I could find not many interviews with cast...
Yeah.
or crew or directors or so on after 1999. But I did find quite a few from before the film came out or around when the film came out.
Okay.
And they're pretty positive about it.
Yeah.
So this was a film, unlike Tank Girl, this is a film with a budget. Like a big...
Yes.
Like Tank Girl had a budget, but this has a big budget.
Yes.
So it came out... This has come out 4 years after Tank Girl.
Yes.
This film's cost at least twice as much. Almost 3 times as much.
Also, I think an important point is it's 10 years after Batman, the first Tim Burton Batman, which was 89.
Yes. Oh,
I think that's a key.
Sure.
I think that's key in the movie cycle. We didn't get a Watchmen movie. I don't have my bell. I meant to turn on my bell today. I forgot to turn it on. We didn't get a Watchmen movie, but
ding, ding, ding. Yep.
we got Mystery Men, which was the takedown of superhero movies.
Yeah.
That we'd gotten through that whole cycle that resulted in Tank Girl and all those Batman movies that were coming out. I think we might have had the 4th Batman movie by this time, which was pretty bad.
Joel Schumacher Batman movies had arrived at this point.
Yeah. At least the first one had, at least. I'm pretty sure the second... Definitely I want to say almost definitely the second one as well. So we've got a parody of that happening. That's the cycle we've gotten to. And it looks... and sounds like Batman. That opening shot looks like Gotham. The score sounds like that Danny Elfman score.
And I actually read that they reused some of the sets from Batman Forever for this film.
Okay.
And I think this film isn't quite sure what it wants to be, I think, some of the time. But what it probably was meant to be is a satire.
Yes.
And what it's spoofing... You might say it's a bit ahead of its time because superhero movies haven't quite become cemented in the public imagination in the way they would. Obviously, now when we think about superhero movies, we think about the Marvel Cinematic Universe juggernaut.
Yeah.
The defining cultural kind of product of our time, virtually. But in 1999, there are certainly many successful comic book films, right?
Yes.
And so, I mean, we've been doing some superhero movies from the 90s.
Yes.
And they're silly and a bit crap. But the 90s was a big decade for comic book film adaptations.
Yes, absolutely. Blade is around this period too.
Yep, Blade, Men in Black.
Yep.
The Mask, a few years before this, which is another Dark Horse entertainment production.
Yep.
So, comic book movies are successful, but superhero films are a bit thinner on the ground.
Right.
And this film is I think is a spoof of superhero films at a time when there aren't that many successful superhero films.
Right.
As you said, it's been 10 years since Batman.
Yeah.
Who knows how many years since Christopher Reeve as Superman.
That was 78.
Right. Well, you knows how many years since Christopher Reeve Superman. And I think, to return to my point, it's very definitely, I think, spoofing Tim Burton's Gotham.
Yes, absolutely. And the leather outfits, like the gear that they're wearing, is very much that Batman look, right? That whole look that came out of that period, and
Yeah, they're wearing leather
and stuff. Yeah.
When they change into their more elaborate costumes about 2/3 of the way into the film.
Yeah.
Those are. Yeah.
Yeah, those are Batman outfits, essentially.
Batman, yes.
Yeah, especially the way the coloring on them is a lot like the Schumacher, like they have that kind of glow to them.
Yes.
All that kind of stuff. I should have wrote down the name of the director. Who never, I don't think did many other movies.
I read a hilarious article published in 1999, whose name escapes me, but it's something like "The Ad Boys Step Up" or something like that. And it was all about how the big directors in Hollywood, or the up-and-coming directors in Hollywood, were all people that had worked on advertising.
Right.
So the director of... You'll look it up. While you're looking it up, I'll elaborate. So the director of this film, of Mystery Men, is a person famous for directing the Got Milk...
Kinka Usher.
Kinka Usher.
Yeah.
Born in France.
Yeah.
He directed Got Milk, and he did the Taco Bell Chihuahua ads.
Okay.
And I read a fantastic article that was singing the praises of directors that had worked in advertising and were now directing feature films.
We had some music video directors come up at this point too, like David Fincher did Alien 3.
Oh, well.
Not too far, but there were a few...
Well, there's some symmetry there, because that was another debacle, and he never directed a feature film again, did he? David Fincher. Is he even...
Are you kidding? He's done like dozens. He's one of the biggest directors. Is this a joke or...
Yeah.
Hang on, I'm gonna put...
It's a joke.
Keep talking. Okay, it is a joke.
No.
Is it a joke or are you joking or not joking? I can't tell.
Cut this.
I can't tell if you're joking or not joking.
No, but...
You keep talking. I'm gonna bring... I can't believe you're saying David Fincher disappeared. Are you kidding? He's at the big... He's disowned Alien 3, of course.
I think that's what I was going for. That's what I was thinking of.
I'm gonna read off some of this filmography for you, and you'll be like, okay, first film, Alien 3. 7, The Game, Fight Club, Panic Room, Zodiac, Benjamin Button, The Social Network, Girl with the Dragon Tattoo, Gone Girl, Mank, and The Killer.
Oh, God.
I don't know what those last two are.
Mank and The Killer.
Yeah, but I've seen... Those are both Netflix productions, but I've seen... I've seen 7 in The Game and Fight Club and Panic Room and Zodiac. Haven't seen Benjamin Button. Haven't seen Social Network. And I don't think I've seen that version of Dragon Tattoo. But I've seen Gone Girl. Yeah, but what happened to Kinka Usher?
Well, he went back to advertisements.
Now, the credit I wanted to... So I was...
And television.
Okay, so there's an amazing coincidence happening this week, which is... I was Googling for images to use for the episode, and I came up with this one that had Mystery Men and Return of the Swamp Thing in the image, the cover image for the article. I was like, okay, that's weird. I didn't plan this, but both these movies came out on 4K HD this week. This article's from 3 days ago. I thought it was to be from 10 years ago. But the thing that really freaked me out was when I went onto Wikipedia and was copying down the credits, it had the writer was Neil Cuthbert, and he had no link, and I was like, okay, who's this guy? So I went on to IMDb. He wrote Swamp Thing, Return of Swamp Thing.
Are you kidding me?
Not kidding. And this guy who wrote this article about the 4K releases, both coming out the same day, also did not notice the fact that it was the same writer on both of these movies.
That blows my mind.
It's a really shocking coincidence.
That's insane.
Yeah. But then he went on to write Pluto Nash, and then he went to writer's jail.
I believe that was his last film.
And the director of Pluto Nash was Ron Underwood, who directed Tremors and some other good stuff.
Tremors is a great movie.
And some other good stuff after that. And he directed Pluto Nash, and he just does TV now because he's in director's jail. Yep. So, but yeah, Neil Cuthbert, this guy, just through some fluke of coincidence, all these things are actually happening right now.
But yes, Kinka Usher, after this film, I believe he went back to commercials.
Probably, yeah.
Never directed another feature film again.
Yeah.
And I think,
Yeah, Fincher somehow went straight to 7 in 1995. Somebody got that after Alien 3.
They must have known the tortuous production of Alien 3.
I don't know. Usually they just blame it on the director. They would never blame it on somebody higher up the chain.
The fish rots from the head down.
So, okay, I guess we should talk a little bit about a plot of this movie. So it's about this gang of superheroes. second-tier superheroes. Mr. Furious, the Shoveler, and the Blue Raja. So the Shoveler just hits people with shovels.
Yep.
Mr. Furious just gets super angry and then supposedly gets really filled with rage and then goes berserk and is able to do awesome stuff, including lifting a bus, supposedly.
We hear about this bus
hear about it.
lifting incident over and over.
And the Blue Raja throws forks.
Master of cutlery, but
Master
it's
of
only forks.
It's only really forks.
And absolutely not knives.
Right, he won't, because they're deadly.
Also, so Blue Raja, played by Hank Azaria
Azaria.
of Simpsons fame.
Interesting choice here because...
Well, Kumar, I read that Ben Stiller was approached for the character of Blue Raja.
Okay.
And that he turned it down.
Okay.
Because he didn't want to play another nerd.
Okay.
So he'd just come off something about Mary.
Okay.
And he was worried about being typecast.
Okay.
So he was interested in the film, but he didn't want to play another Nebbish.
Right.
So he asked to play Mr. Furious.
Right. Okay. So I forgot to mention Ben Stiller's Mr. Furious. William H. Macy is the Shoveler.
He's great as him. Yeah. And Hank Azaria is
Hank
the Blue
Azaria
Raja.
in a superhero movie. In this role is interesting to me because if you've seen him in any other movie, he's the most ripped, jacked guy. He takes off his shirt in some movies, and he's just like huge.
He is.
And he's got huge ripped muscles, and you're like, okay, so we put him in the superhero movie, and he never takes his shirt off. Because he's like the worst kind of superhero. He's not actually that. Like all these guys are not heroic.
He's supposed to be a bit of a dweeb,
right?
And his character is his character it wouldn't get up now, but essentially, part of the gag is that his character is complex.
Yes.
He's an American man,
yeah,
who is pretending to be British,
yes,
who is dressed as an Indian,
yes,
and calls himself the Blue Raja,
yes,
and he's always explaining it. Like people are like, why
yes.
you're British but you're dressed like
and he's
you
got
call
some
yourself a Raja.
explanation
He's
about
got
the
this
British
complex
Raj.
explanation about the British Raj.
Yeah,
and the whole thing is ridiculous.
yes.
And it's meant to be treated as ridiculous.
Yes.
I think people would avoid it.
Oh,
in a
especially
present,
after the Apu controversy, and he says he would. Didn't he say he would not play the role anymore if they asked him not to?
Right. So there was a whole blog about that. There was some controversy about Hank Azaria being the voice of Apu Nahasapima Petalon.
Yes.
In The Simpsons, he now no longer plays the role.
There was a whole documentary about it. And then there was an episode of The Simpsons which tried to address it and fell on its face.
Oh, I dare say.
As every episode of The Simpsons after season 8 does.
Controversial opinion.
So...
So, with that in mind, watching this is especially...
But he's not playing a brown guy. He's just playing an idiotic American who has a incorrect understanding of what the British Raj is.
Yes.
They wouldn't try it, but there's actually nothing wrong with it.
Okay, I'm inclined to agree. The whole point behind the bit is that it's a silly construct that he's made,
yes,
and it's ludicrous.
Yes,
and he has to hide, and he hides it from his mother.
Yes,
you know, like he's burning incense in his room and practicing his British accent and throwing forks at a dartboard, working on one-liners, and his mother's knocking on the door. It's like, "Are you smoking the marijuana in there, son?"
Did she call it? She doesn't call it marijuana. She calls it the
whack. I don't remember.
It's something funny. Yeah. I might be able to find it.
So you have the script there.
Yeah.
I read that this. One of the things I read was that the script was fluid, as Ben Still described it.
Okay.
So.
So it was changing on the spot.
Yes.
Okay.
Yeah. So there was some ad-libbing going on.
Right. Well, the other hero we haven't mentioned. I'm get around to the ad-libbing. The other hero we haven't mentioned is Captain Amazing, played by Greg Kinnear.
Brilliant.
Who comes in as a super handsome dude. He's got advertising like a race car, F1 racer. He's got advertising all over his suit.
Yes.
And the whole plot of the movie is that he is starting to lose sponsors. So he saves these old folks. So the mystery men are trying to save this robbery of this nursing home. Captain Amazing comes in and actually does the job, but people are kind of like, this is an old folks home, what are you doing here? And he's lost his sponsorship with Pepsi.
Yep.
And so he goes to his publicist, played by Ricky Jay, and says, I need, all the good, there's no villains, the villains are gone. So they need to somehow get a villain back on the scene that he can fight to up his publicity again, get his sponsorship back. There's a real deep in-joke here, where Ricky Jay says, I'm a publicist, not a magician. But Ricky Jay is a magician. He was a magician for years before he became an actor. That's what he was known as. One of the best card magicians in the business. Anyway, so he ends up, this guy Casanova Frankenstein, played by Geoffrey Rush.
In his first Hollywood film.
Really? So this is the first thing after Shine?
That's what Wikipedia says.
Wow. Okay. That's pretty amazing. He's playing a very similar role to his Marquis de Sade in Quills a little bit.
I think he's a lot like he is as that pirate in the Pirates of the Caribbean.
Yes.
Too. Main difference being the accent. In this film, he does a German accent.
Yes.
It's pretty good German accent.
It is good. I think he's having fun.
He's pretty good. Yeah. Him and Paul Reubens, I think, get this film.
Right. Right. So there's a great scene where he's in front of his parole board at the insane asylum. He's about to go on parole.
Oh, it's just like Marquis
and they're going to turn him down, and Captain Amazing in his secret identity comes in, and it's a really hilarious Clark Kent thing where he comes in wearing the glasses and the suit, and he's like, I just had dinner with Captain Amazing, and he had something, and everybody's really impressed. All the parole board is like, oh, Captain Amazing, wow. Brilliant. And he's like, he had some things to say about releasing him.
Yeah.
And he wrangles getting him released.
He reads off like his laundry list or his shopping list.
Yeah, his grocery list. Yeah.
Because he is Captain Amazing. So it's, as you say, it's like a Clark Kent, Superman, Batman, Bruce Wayne situation.
It's a really great takedown of the Superman thing in one scene. Because he just comes in and says, I just had dinner with Captain Amazing. And it's just him with glasses on.
It is actually good.
And they're like all impressed by it. So he gets him released, and then he goes to attack him, but then he's captured. And the rest of the movie is the mystery man, because Mr. Fierce sees this happen, he's like, okay, we gotta rescue him. We're gonna mount a rescue. Mm-hmm. And my point about the fluidity of the script is, that's the entire structure of the script. They basically need to recruit some more heroes, and then they need to armor up, and then they need to attack, and that's it. And you can just put whatever bits of ad-libbing in there, or whatever you want, or shift around the script as necessary through there.
Well, Casanova Frankenstein, Geoffrey Rush, threatens Captain Amazing that he's going to kill him within a day.
Yes, that's right.
You recall? He says, this time tomorrow I'm going to kill you.
Yeah, he's got some mega laser to do it. Yeah.
At the stroke of midnight, and that's when my plan's going to kick off. Yeah. Fine. There's a timeline.
Yeah.
There's a deadline, there's stakes. But then, I swear, a lot longer than a day passes.
Was it exactly a day?
No way is it a day, Kumar.
No, was the timeline a day? Did he say that one day?
He said this time, midnight tomorrow,
okay, there's definitely a few days, because there's the recruiting, he goes on a date, there's all the armoring up. It's definitely, because they have the whole barbecue where they try to recruit some more heroes. And then they have all the training with the Sphinx.
Yeah, they do training with the Sphinx.
And then he quits the team, and then he has the date. But then he does say a line later on, like, I quit the team today, or I went on that date tonight, or something. Like, there's some line he says where it sounds almost like it. When I heard that, I was like, oh, did that all happen in the same day?
They go and see Tom Waits.
Yes, Tom Waits is the armorer guy, the Q, yeah.
It takes longer. It's longer than a day, but it's supposed to, just cut that line, guys. The film... it clearly took place over longer than a single day.
Yes, but you could take it as like...
And I think this is a problem. One of the problems with the movie, I have several problems with this movie. Okay. And one of my problems is it's much too long.
It is 2 hours long. It is way too long. But I would say that the timeline might be... This is giving it too much credit, but it's almost like the gag with the countdown timer in Galaxy Quest, where the timer is obviously not going the number of seconds that are actually passing.
The film's not that self-aware. This is another problem of mine with the film. It's too earnest. It takes itself too seriously. It needs to be sillier, because they all have these. They all have these silly powers.
Yes.
And Yeah, well, they're ridiculous. Like the spleen, his power. So Paul Reubens' character.
Yeah.
Paul Reubens, who appeared in this film in between arrests for pornography offences.
Yes. And was in Batman Returns.
Was he really?
He was the father of the Penguin in the opening scene.
Because
he's Tim Burton, because they worked together on Pee-wee's Big Adventure. Yeah.
That's great.
Yeah.
Well,
So
he's one of the, he's like the best thing.
someday.
He's one of the, him and Geoffrey Rush.
Yeah.
Like, William Macy's good. But
No,
William
I
Macy's,
think William H. Macy's great in this, and his wife, whose name I cannot remember off the top of my head. That actress is so good.
William Macy, she's fine. She's great in this as well. William Macy
Lewis.
plays the shovel up, and he's kind of like the heart of the team. He's deadly earnest.
Yeah.
He's a blue collar man with a heart of gold.
Yeah.
He has this gift, and he feels compelled to use it. And his gift is hitting people with shovels.
Yes.
He says, "I shovel well.
Yes.
I shovel very well."
Yes.
His wife says, "You
Yes.
shovel better than any man I've ever known."
Yeah. Yeah.
But but that doesn't mean you have to go out and hit people.
Yeah. And he's been doing it for 12 years.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And he's this schlub. But yeah, and this is I think this film would have been better if it was shorter, first of all.
Yes.
And second of all, if it didn't take itself quite so seriously.
Well-
if it was a bit sillier.
Okay, I'm not sure what you would cut. I was thinking about this the whole 2 hours. I'm like, oh, this scene is funny. It should stay in, and they kind of need this scene and this
There are
scene.
some great, much like Tank Girl, this film is not greater than the sum of its parts. So there are all these great concepts and scenes. Like,
Yeah.
if you told me, hey, Jordan, sit down and watch this movie.
Yep.
It's fucking great.
Yeah.
Ben Stiller plays a guy that thinks he's the Hulk but can't Hulk out.
Yes.
Tom Waits is a mad inventor that lives in an amusement park.
Yes. Yes.
Geoffrey Rush plays a crazy Lex Luthor guy with an Austrian accent.
Yeah.
Janeane Garofalo throws around a bowling ball with a skull in it.
The skull of her father, and it flies around, and she talks to it.
Doug Jones shows up as Pencil Man.
Was it Doug Jones?
Yes, that was Doug Jones.
Oh my God. Okay.
With Pencil Boy.
Oh wow. Okay. Right.
That was Doug Jones.
Right. Okay. Amazing.
Greg, Captain Amazing.
Yeah. Greg Kinnear. Yeah.
Greg Kinnear plays a guy, a superhero with a bunch of corporate sponsorships.
Yeah.
What if the superhero was like some sports team?
Lena Olin is the psychiatrist who. She's basically Harley Quinn because she is Casanova Frankenstein's psychiatrist from the asylum, but she's actually an evil.
Yeah, she's exactly like Harley Quinn, but very
And
forgettable.
Claire Forlani is the waitress girlfriend. I
There's a scene where Eddie Izzard sprays hairspray and dances around to disco music.
Yes.
If you lined up each of these individual components and told me this is the film I was going to watch, I would be thrilled to watch this movie. And yet, when I sat down and watched the movie, it's long and boring.
Look, I think it's uneven. I think there are hilarious scenes. Every other scene is pretty great. And like this scene where he rages out on top of the limousine is so great. And I think there's enough there. I think despite the slower bits, I think all the material. I love seeing them sew their suits because we never see the superheroes make their suits, and that was kind of a great takedown of that. Where are they getting their suits from? How's Batman getting these suits?
The shoveler, when he first comes home to his wife.
Oh my God, that's great. Yes.
She says, "Well, your son needs his." What is it?
It's his like baseball umpire.
He's the catcher
Vest. Yeah, the catcher's vest. Yeah.
Yeah. He needs his catcher's vest back, and he's like, "Well, I need it too. I paid for it."
Yeah.
There are so many great moments, but unfortunately, it's not I don't know how to express it except with that cliche. It's not greater than the sum of its parts. The total package is just it's too long. It takes itself. It needs to be more. It needs to be sillier. So, like I said, Geoffrey Rush. And so if I want to zero in on two performances, Geoffrey Rush and Paul Reubens. So Paul Reubens, it plays a character called the Spleen.
Yep, he was cursed by a gypsy.
He's got the best, this is spot on like the Flaming Carrot, right?
Right.
Silly.
Yeah.
Silliness.
Yeah.
He was He was walking with his mates after school.
Yeah.
He cut a fart.
Yeah.
His mates all blamed him.
Yes.
Rightly so. But he, in turn,
Blamed
an
gypsy
old
that was
gypsy
passing
lady that was
by.
passing by, and
Yeah.
she cursed him
Yeah.
that he would forever be the one that dealt it.
Yes. Yes.
There's a great scene where he's humped by a skunk,
Right.
apropos of nothing.
Yes. It's just in there because I guess he stinks and it stinks. Maybe that was.
And they
the
likes him
connection.
because he stinks. And come on, there's a great scene where well, I don't know if I'd call it a great scene, but it's another superfluous scene essentially where they're discussing the upcoming mission. Tom Waits is repairing their battle wagon,
Yep.
the one that Ben Stiller is supposed to junk. The old
Yes.
lady yells at him to junk it.
Yes, and it's quite obvious. That's in the first 20 minutes. It's quite obvious that's going to be the battle wagon in the movie.
Yeah.
The armored car. Yeah.
Yeah. They're just sort of having a discussion about the upcoming mission, and then there's an explosion behind the spleen,
Yep.
and they jump,
Yeah.
and the spleen says, "Excuse me."
Yeah.
It's great. Kumar, I read it was a total accident.
Right. Okay.
Someone working on the film, a workman, tossed a lighter.
Whoa.
Yes, this is
Okay.
in a prop that was going to explode later.
Okay.
Right? There was a fire.
Yeah.
The lighter blew up.
Whoa.
There's a small explosion.
Okay.
The actors jump. Paul Reubens doesn't break character
Wow.
and says, "Excuse me."
Wow.
I saw that in like the trailers for this movie back in
Right.
1999.
Right.
Like as one of the establishing moments for
Right.
the spleen's character.
Right.
And it was ad-libbed.
Wow.
Citation needed. I didn't read it on a reliable site, but I want to believe it.
Right. Okay.
But yes, sorry.
Yeah.
But I think they're hamming it up big time. Paul Reubens and Geoffrey Rush.
Yes.
And I think some of the it's too serious. I think some of the other characters. I think it should be a little more absurd, a little more like the source material, the source material in inverted commas.
Okay, so here we go. So can you have this? Can you have a cast all operating at that level for 90 minutes? Is that have we seen that before? I think we have. It's probably like like a Monty Python or an Airplane kind of thing. Maybe it's a Zucker Brothers kind of movie. Maybe is what we're talking about. Maybe what it should be. But
this, that's the or like. I don't know. What am I envisioning?
But I think in the
this
comic
is
you
more
can do that. If it's just one panel of the guy called Jumpin' Jehoshaphat and you see him jump and you never see him again, that's fine. I don't think it's going to function as a movie. Maybe again the question is, why would you make a movie of this? Which is the question we have with Tank Girl. But I think the reason you make a movie is just because you've had 10 years since Batman and you've been getting all those movies and you're like, all those leather movies, and it's like, okay, it's time we're ready for a parody of this.
That's it. And I think it needed to be more of a parody. The thing is, this is a blockbuster film. Like, this is a film that everyone expected to do well.
Yes.
This is the impression that I got from reading the articles from 1999 that are preserved on the web, right? So, this is a film that people thought was going to do well. This was a film with a $68 million budget, US.
Wow, yeah.
Right?
Right.
This is a film with serious actors in it, with serious money behind it.
Yeah.
So, this isn't like superhero movie or scary movie part 4.
Right.
One of those films that are total parodies of the source material. Unself-conscious parodies.
But, okay, so you've actually, I don't know why I went to Zucker and Abrams and Monty Python. You've just pointed out exactly. Those movies are exactly what you're talking about, I think, and those movies are pretty awful. Past the first scary movie, maybe.
Yeah, but look, I don't think I'm ever going to watch... Okay, I think Mystery Man is better than Tank Girl. Okay?
Oh, yeah, I agree with that.
Yes, I dare say you would, because you clearly like Tank Girl, but you clearly like Mystery Man, but I didn't like Mystery Man.
Yeah.
But I don't think I'm going to watch Mystery Man again. And here's another point. The amount of ink spilled, say, on the internet about Tank Girl is much, much more than what I could find about Mystery Man.
Yeah.
Tank Girl seems to have inspired people, excited people.
Yeah.
Is a legitimate cult movie in a way that Mystery Man isn't. Mystery Man, I think, is even more formulaic than Tank Girl. And where it succeeds, I suppose, in the sense that it succeeded because it's hewed to its formula. It's sort of just... It's been successful in the sense that anything would be successful if you threw $68 million in it towards it, and it had Ben Stiller in it, and it had William Macy and Hank Azaria in it.
Yeah.
But it hasn't inspired people like Tank Girl has. I don't think people dress up like Mystery Man characters. One of the things that I talked about last week with Rachel Talele's article was that she talked about she'd come around to Tank Girl because of the sheer number of people that had approached her since it came out to tell her that it inspired them. People that dressed up as Tank Girl for their weddings, people that dressed up as Tank Girl at comic book conventions and so on and so forth. No one's dressing up as Mr. Furious or the Blue Raja, I don't think.
I think that's right.
This film's vanished from the collective consciousness.
I'm kind of wondering why, though. Why? What is it about its... Is it because it's... was Tank Girl a bit more underground, maybe?
I think maybe
allowed
having
it to come back.
Maybe it's got. Underground. It's a bit more underground. I think that some of the concepts, some of the themes, some of the casting is a bit more exciting and alternative, perhaps. Like having a female lead who's a bit crass, who's sexualized.
Yeah.
There's nothing like that. It's very by the numbers, I think. Mystery Man.
Yes, I think that's true.
I wouldn't, but I think Mystery Man's the better film, but I think it almost suffers for being the better film.
Sure, sometimes if a movie has some warts and kind of interesting flaws.
Yes, sure.
Definitely, that happens all the time. I watch all sorts of slasher movies all the time.
Films you love to hate, you know.
I don't even hate them. I'm just like,
or
this
films
is
that are
fine.
so entertaining because they're so bad.
I don't care that
sure.
the effects are cheap. I don't care. That's not
right.
That's not what we're here for, or whatever.
So bad it's good it's
not even bad. I'm just saying they're fine. They didn't have as much money as the thing that was playing at the Cineplex or whatever. Fine. And there's bad. The scripts are bad or whatever. Maybe I am saying they are bad, but they just are what they are, and they're enjoyable. And I think I can see what you're saying. The budget for this was really huge, and that gives it a gloss that keeps you from enjoying what's working in spite of the lack of budget on some of those other movies.
Yeah.
Yeah, maybe that's it. But I have seen this movie 3 times.
Amazing.
I saw it when it came out, and then probably another 5 years later, and then watched it this week.
Prep for this week, sure.
And I think I do like the gags, and I'm aware of the sagging in there. My God, I love the villain whose name was Big Tobacco, who's this gangster that smokes. I loved all that kind of stuff, and I thought it was fun. We haven't talked about Invisible Boy, who only can turn invisible if nobody's looking at him, including himself, which I thought was one of the greatest ideas, and I still think about it regular. It's such a great concept. And then it finally does work in the end when he closes his eyes and walks toward a...
But it's almost like Intangible Boy, because he sort of phases out of his clothing.
Yes.
And avoids the security, because he eventually... It is funny. There's setup and payoff, because I think, is it the shoveler that knows who he is? They need more people on their team, because they've had their butts kicked by the disco gang.
Yeah.
Led by
the Disco
Eddie
Brothers.
Izzard, the Disco Brothers. And they realize they need more recruits.
Yeah.
Which forms kind of like the middle part of the film, doesn't it? And the shoveler's like, I know a guy.
Right.
And they go and see him, and as you say, they're in his room.
Yes.
He's clearly it's much like this room in which I find myself now.
Yeah.
There's comic book stuff all over the walls, posters, comics, pictures, figurines, everything. He's clearly a big fanboy.
Yeah.
And he desperately wants to be a superhero. And they ask him, well, what's your power?
Yeah.
I can turn invisible if no one's watching, including me.
Yeah.
I have to have my eyes closed.
Yeah.
So if you have your eyes closed, how do you know you're invisible?
Yeah.
You can feel it.
He can feel it. He just knows.
And they're like, well, we're going to go.
Yeah.
But there's a payoff, of course.
Yeah.
Because after the tutelage of the Sphinx is a cool character, they've encouraged not only Invisible Boy to trust in his powers, but all of his comrades to trust in the powers of their fellows. Shoveler, as the heart of the team, you can do this. This is your moment.
Yeah.
They all close their eyes and turn their backs.
Yeah.
He walks up to the security system,
Yeah.
and sure enough, he turns invisible.
Yeah.
And his clothes fall off him, because I think he also phases
He
out of
seems
his
to
clothing.
phase out of his clothes, yeah, or something like that, yeah.
And he turns off the security system and reappears, and then he goes, I did it! I turned invisible! They all turn around, of course he's buck naked.
Yeah.
And there's an amusing moment where Janeane Garofalo says, maybe you want to put some shorts on if you're going to continue fighting evil today.
Yeah.
Which is another moment I remember from the trailer.
Right. I think she's great, and I think that the kind of the point I was trying to get to is that despite the lack of wackiness from all the other cast members, I think the cast is so great, it's hard to not enjoy them. And even though the Shoveler's not silly as you want him to be, maybe, I think the scenes with his wife are so good, and they're so sincere, which is exactly the opposite of what you want.
Yeah.
But I'm enjoying this. I loved his relationship with his wife, and I really dug Janeane Garofalo was a legend. And I think she's so great in this. I actually I thought everybody was really good in it.
Janeane Garofalo, if what I've read is accurate, was a big booster for this film, and convinced, I think, like Ben Stiller to come on board. And although she said that if she was going to perform in it, she needed to give a speech where she talked about independent cinema, which she gives at the end.
Yes, she does. Yes. That was great. I love that little bit. It was just kind of in there. Yeah, that was really amazing.
Have we adequately covered the plot?
I think so. So they need to need to rescue Captain Amazing. So they recruit the other guys at this barbecue. They sign up nobody except for Janeane Garofalo, who shows up late. They hire her. Then they need training, so they go to this character called the Sphinx, who speaks in riddles.
The thing is,
then they need the gear, so they go to Tom Waits' character to build all the gear. But hang on. So Mr. Furious quits because he's sick of the training. And he has a kind of bad date, or a good. What was he? It goes on a date with the girl that he
walks her
the
home,
waitress,
and she's into him despite.
Yeah.
I'm not sure what to make of Mr. Furious's character, because he's so unlikable. Like, he's obnoxious, right? Because I think.
No, but I don't think so, because he's the voice of reason.
Yes.
He's kind of like, the other guys are really, they want a publicist and stuff.
I suppose that's why I don't want a voice of reason in this movie. I want it to be absurd.
Right.
But also, his power is that he's like the Hulk, essentially, right?
Yeah.
And I think they're going for something a bit meta. So he behaves like he has a short trigger.
Yeah.
But he never... he's abrasive and acts like a jerk because he wants to get mad, but he can never quite get mad. And by the end of the film, he's not even sure if he can Hulk out or not.
I actually think the direction around him is really good, because there's a moment very early on where they have to deal with some thugs outside the restaurant or something, and he starts to get angry. He's like, "You're making me angry," and the music starts to swell. The music's really well placed, and he's almost talking to the camera whenever he gets angry. So I think that all that stuff actually works for him, for that character. So anyway, they recruit all these guys. They go through the training. Then he rejoins the team, but he's lost his confidence, and they have to convince him to rage out. Then they go, but Casanova Frankenstein, the villain, the Geoffrey Rush villain, has built this laser to destroy the city. See, I think just because he wants to. I don't think he has any motivation. But he's not holding it for ransom. He's just gonna set the laser off. But he's called in all these other gangs of villains. I loved them. They were the frat boys.
Yep.
There was this
Did you notice who the leader of the frat boys was, Kumar?
Yeah, who was that?
It was Michael Bay.
I was like, who's that guy?
Which is just
and I was like, whoa.
the best thing ever.
He is the ultimate frat boy in a sense, if you think about it.
And another advertising director made good.
Right, okay. I didn't look at... You know whose name I did notice in the credits, and I just actually looked it up, was Sung Kang from the Fast and Furious movies.
Right, this was, I think, his first film.
It was before Better Luck Tomorrow. So it was really early.
Yeah.
So it was before he hooked up with Justin Lin.
He's literally just
he's just a thug.
He's literally in the background.
But his name was in when I saw his name in the credits, which I did not notice Doug Jones or Michael Bay, but I noticed Sung Kang's name. So he assembles all these gangs, and he's going to prove to them that he's gonna kill Captain Amazing to show that he's good on his word, or whatever. But actually, the Mystery Men have already killed Captain Amazing by accident.
Yes. The Blue Raja kills him.
So they basically light up the laser. It's about to go off. Casanova Frankenstein has kidnapped the waitress girlfriend. And he's threatening her, and we get a great little nod to the $6 Million Man in there. Basically, Mr. Venus rescues her, and they use the bowling ball to smash the laser to smithereens, and that's basically the...
It's called the Psychofraculator.
Yes.
And I think its powers are not well defined.
No.
But it does something to the nature of reality.
Did they say that?
Yeah, well, Tom Waits has a whole line.
Yeah.
A whole
does have a line about
forgettable, growls it out in his Tom Waits voice. This device.
Right.
It turns the conscious mind synapses.
Yeah.
And no one understood it. They say the scientists that worked on it went mad. And it's like, well,
Right,
and of course... Casanova Frankenstein was in an insane asylum, and it's implied that's how he learned how to build the psychofraculator.
Right.
Probably an unnecessary piece of backstory.
Right.
I really like Tom Waits' character.
Yeah.
God, if this film was half an hour shorter even.
Yeah.
Anyway, sorry, I've made my point. Anyway, so they defeat...
Yeah.
They defeat Casanova Frankenstein, cast him into his own machine.
Yeah.
Janeane Garofalo, the bowler, throws the skull of her father in the bowling ball into the device. He destroys the machine. They leave in triumph.
The next day, yeah.
And they're interviewed.
Yeah.
They're interviewed, which is where Janeane Garofalo delivers her line about independent cinema.
Yep.
And they coin the name Mystery Men. And that's the end of
They don't even agree on Mystery Men.
No, the Sphinx... there's a bait and switch.
The reporter calls them.
It's a bait and switch. The reporter says, well, whoever they are, these mystery men sure have saved the city. Yeah. And then the Sphinx says, wait, I know what we're going to be called. The Super Squad.
Yeah. Okay, anything else we want to say about it?
I have some trivia.
Okay.
Danny DeVito apparently was approached to direct and star.
Interesting.
He was very interested, but according to Wikipedia... negotiations fell apart over the soundtrack.
Whoa. Okay.
I don't understand how that's a point
very weird
that you would die on.
Maybe he insisted on Danny Elfman and they're like, we can't afford him. And he's like, I'm not
Danny
doing
Elfman would have been a good fit.
Because he was in Batman Returns.
Yeah, exactly. And this film is very much in the mold of Batman.
Yeah.
I think it's trying to satirize Batman. See, because it's set in presumably an alternative 1999.
Yeah.
But...
yeah, something we never talked about is all the languages on the signage.
Yeah.
All the signs, every sign is in a different language. There's like some Japanese in there, there's some...
I don't get...
there's some Hindi on the wrecking yard.
What's the point of this alternative setting for this film? Like, I don't get it.
I get it because those people don't exist in our world.
But they could exist in our world because their powers are extremely dubious.
Well, no, I think the gypsy fart power, I think the sentient bowling ball, I think the invisibility, which is actual invisibility, I think all that stuff does not exist in our world. I think Gotham, much like Gotham is an alternate New York, especially in the Schumacher films where you see the Statue of Liberty in Gotham.
Yeah. I think in the Schumacher and Tim Burton films, the dark noir Art Deco kind of setting is an important kind of mirror to the character of Batman as a kind of
I see your point, yes.
And I don't see why... Well, it's not a big deal. But I kind of... I guess it's been too long. Maybe... But this film wasn't a success. That's the other thing.
Did you know, apparently, Tim Burton called up Alan Moore...
Ding.
Before making Batman and said, how should I handle this? And Alan Moore said, make sure you get Gotham right.
Right. Well, he did get Gotham right.
Yeah. But, I mean, that's a weird universe. Like, the cameras have these huge 1930s flash bulbs. All the cars are, like, from the 40s and stuff.
It's good. And I guess this film, Mystery Men, shows that you can't just import that.
But it's not... I think it is important, but I think that the thing about the languages is really... That was an interesting choice that somebody made along the line. Some production designer
I saw that it might have been... Look, I don't even... I saw that it might have been a nod to Blade Runner.
Weird.
But I don't see how or why that would be a significant comparison.
Yeah, well, I mean... If you're a production designer, you're like, what am I going to do this time? I'll make it like Blade Runner. I like Blade Runner. Why not? There doesn't have to be a specific... reason. It's better if there's a reason, but there might not be.
This film's hunting for a reason a lot of the time for why it exists. How did this film get made? It's funny because this was supposed to be a big film.
Yeah, and I mean I do think it had super bad luck with Sixth Sense, which is the opposite kind of movie, which cost a lot less, and it was out at the same time, and everybody was going to see that.
Yeah. So this film, like I said, it cost something like $68 million to make, which is a big budget movie.
That is huge. Yeah.
And it made back about $30 million.
Okay.
So it's not quite as bad as the fifth of its budget that Tank Girl made back, but it's still pretty bad. It still lost $30 million and only made back half its budget.
Okay. Okay. What did you think of Bob Burton's Flaming Carrot?
I really liked Bob Burton's Flaming Carrot.
Yeah.
I'd happily read more Flaming Carrot.
Yeah.
Oh, it was really great.
Yeah. I don't think we've had any since about 2006, and he's kind of had other people draw it. And as he said, like the Mystery Men comic that came out around this time was written by Bob Burton and drawn by other people, and it just was a little bit flat to me. But definitely that old Flaming Carrot stuff is real. There's also a crossover issue of Flaming Carrot with... Well, there were TMNT crossovers and stuff too, but the most important one is the crossover with Reed Fleming, World's Toughest Milkman. And
I've never heard of either of those things.
There's no movie of that. Unfortunately, it would be fortunately because we could get to read some Reed Fleming, World's Toughest Milkman. But
if we filmed it ourselves, we could then read those comics.
I wonder if there's some fan film out there.
Let's
Somebody
hunt
must
it down.
have done it.
So that we can do it for this podcast.
So yeah, I love Flaming Carrot. And actually, Georgina has a friend. My wife has a friend who has a huge Flaming Carrot tattoo on his ankle.
Are you kidding?
Not kidding. He's a chef. Apparently he got we were talking about it the other day. He allowed his friend who was a tattoo artist, and it was like she's just learning. I think she's apparently really good now. Like she's one of the top people in Melbourne, but apparently it was like one of her first... He let her try on his leg.
Brilliant. And he asked for a Flaming Carrot tattoo.
He got a Flaming Carrot.
Amazing. You see, no one's getting Ben Stiller as Mr. Furious.
No, that's true.
On their leg.
Okay, so I think we're very clear about where we fall in the movie. I'm still going to say yes. I think the cast is adorable. They're so likable. I like everybody in this movie. I can't believe the cast, looking back now. I guess Geoffrey Rush is maybe less of a surprise now, knowing that it was his first Hollywood movie. But I think it's just astonishing.
Whereas I, on the other hand, I'm the nay.
Yep. Okay.
Thoroughly a nay. I can't believe how much this movie sucks, considering how great the cast is and how many funny, odd moments there are in it.
But as this alternative you have described to me is Scary Movie, the superhero version.
But with Ben Stiller and William Macy and Geoffrey Rush in it.
Is it going to work with them delivering one-line gags?
Or something like that. I don't want to talk about it, because Deadpool's technically in the Marvel Cinematic Universe and we can't talk about it.
It's not.
Deadpool's not in the...
No, it's in the Fox universe. It's in the Fox Marvel universe. It's not a Marvel.
Of course, you're right.
Yeah.
So is that fair game then? Are we doing Fox Cinematic Universe?
This is a real question.
That's for another time.
Well, no, let's talk about it, because we have to talk about it at some point. But it was like my cutoff might be 2008. I'm kind of thinking superhero movies after 2008 are off limits, possibly, because that's when Iron Man came out. But
Is that when Iron Man came out? 2008?
2008.
Okay, right.
So I'm kind of like, well,
It's a good cutoff.
is that going to be... Yeah, I don't know. We'll decide when we get to it.
Well, of course, I mean, the other thing about Mystery Man is X-Men came out the next year.
Right,
So,
yeah,
like,
yeah.
And X-Men, I think, is when it's kind of when the Renaissance
Yeah, and then
of
Spider-Man was
comic-
2001.
Yeah, Sam
Yeah.
Raimi's Spider-Man. I think that's when the renaissance of superhero
Yes.
movies really starts.
Yes.
And this film, I think, is sort of like the gurgling around the drain of the 80s and 90s terrible superhero
Yeah.
sequence.
Yeah. Okay, adaptation. This is an interesting one. I'm actually... You know, that scene where he mentions Princess Headbutt was, to me, was like, that's the spirit of Mystery Man.
Sure it is, but it's 30 seconds of the movie. Of a 2-hour movie!
I think if you read Mystery Man and you're like, this is awesome and I want a movie of it, I don't know how you could expect to go to a movie and see a movie that's like the comic in any way that looks and feels like that weird-ass, badly drawn comic book. I want to say yay, because Bob Burden likes it.
Oh my god.
So...
I say nay, Kumar. 1,000 times
yeah,
nay.
I understand
And look,
why you're
Kumar,
saying it.
I want to live in a world
Yeah.
where you can make the adaptation of Bob Burton's terribly drawn Flaming Carrot Mystery Man
Yes.
issue. I deny the
It would
reality
have
in which
to be animated.
I don't know. But I tell you what, I don't want to live in a world where that's impossible. I want to live
Sure.
in a world where it can happen. So I say nay to Mystery
But
Man.
at the world we live in at the moment, I don't think it's possible.
Well, Kumar, there's scuttlebutt. Ben Stiller's been asked recently, would he be interested in making
Okay.
a Mystery Man 2?
Okay.
And he seems to be in favour of the idea.
Right.
So who
Why wouldn't he
knows?
be? I think he's actually. I think this is a fun role for him. I don't know why he wouldn't want to come back to it.
I don't know. I think he's carried. Yeah. Well, exactly. So who knows, Kumar? We may get it. And
so
then we'll
I
see.
still haven't actually said yay or nay. I don't think definitively. It gets some of it right.
No, I can't.
You know what? It gets. I feel like there's no. I feel like it's like that Aha Take on Me video where you come through the world from the drawings into the real world, and it has to be a different thing on this side of the mirror. And I kind of think I just cannot see because we've been talking about Airplane and Scary Movie. That's kind of what's stuck in my head as the alternative version of this. Any cigar chomping big tobacco movie producer is going to read this comic and go, okay, we're going to make a scary movie of it. If you're going to say it's got to be, if the condition is that it has to be a wacky version of it. Okay, I'm going to say nay.
Okay.
But I'm going to say it's not the movie's fault. And it's not the fault of anyone involved that it's a nay. I think that on this side of the looking glass, this is the movie that had to be made of Mystery Men. And I don't think there could have been a goofball. When did Scary Movie come out? Well after this.
Yeah. 2000.
No, and it would have been
Oh,
like
it might have been 99 even, actually.
Then it would have been. There was Blair Witch parody stuff in it, so.
Oh, and Blair Witch came out 1 week before.
Yes, Blair Witch
Mystery
is
Men
another thing that tanked Mystery Men supposedly.
Yes, came out a week earlier.
Yeah.
They delayed it a week so as not to clash, but it didn't help.
Right.
It finished like 6th in its opening weekend.
Yeah.
Nationally in America.
So I think it can't. I can't imagine any other version of we're gonna make a wacky superhero parody. I'm surprised we haven't had one recently. There might be a superhero movie, quote unquote superhero movie version. Like,
where are the satires of the Marvel Cinematic Universe?
Because we're 15 years into
the last one I can think of is superhero movie, and that was very much the Fox.
There were a few, in the 90s there was like Blank Man by the Wayans Brothers.
Yep.
So there was a few that were like hanging around doing the same sort of thing.
Like, it's an absolute juggernaut Where are the parodies? Question for another week.
Okay. Speaking of parodies, next week. So we're going to talk about the 1980 movie called Superman in Telugu.
Yeah.
Okay, now
Which is
I have a kind of crap version of this with decent English subtitles, which I found online from a site called DVDlady.com, which seems to have a lot of dodgy... I didn't get a DVD. I was like, can I buy this? They're like, yeah, we'll send you the files.
right.
And DVD Lady also, I think the person's name was not a lady, but also had the Hindi Superman from 1987, which we're going to do probably the week after, but possibly in the same week. We will see.
Depending on how much material we can squeeze.
So, but if you go into YouTube, you can just Google the Telugu Superman 1980. There's multiple versions on there. They're all pretty good looking compared to the version I've got. Like they've been DVD ripped or something, and they're quite... The version I've got is actually a bit disappointing because the colors really pop in the YouTube versions that you look at. You might not want to watch the whole thing. You might want to part of it. I will say, I think it'll be obvious when you watch. I think so. He he gets his powers from Hanuman. Like, I think his father is killed or something. He goes and prays to Hanuman, this little kid, and then he kills himself. This little kid kills himself, and then Hanuman the statue comes to life.
This sounds bonkers.
And revives him, and he has super powers.
We don't want to anticipate too much of what we're going to talk about next week. This sounds amazing.
Yeah, so just maybe go on... I don't know if you want to watch the whole thing or whatever. Again, there's no subtitles on the YouTube versions of this. Right. So it might just be an adventure to watch it or try to watch it.
Telugu Superman and Hindi Superman, two Indian adaptations.
I don't know quite what we're going to...
how official are these adaptations of Superman?
Oh, they're very illegal.
Right.
They're so... In fact, he wears an H for Hanuman on his chest. He doesn't have an S. And we're going to... so I'm not sure what comic we're going to read yet, but probably we're just going to read an Origin of Superman story. Maybe... Okay. I think there was one in Superman 400 or 300, and that one's probably good coverage.
Of who Superman is?
Yeah.
Sure.
Yeah.
Sure.
And that's probably maybe enough. I don't know how this episode's going to be. We'll see what happens.
Okay. All right. So this is a postscript to the episode because it occurred to us that we didn't discuss the song All Star by Smash Mouth.
Yes.
This was the first film to use All Star as part of the theme.
Twice.
Once over the end credits.
Yeah.
And very, very briefly in the middle.
I think it was twice in the movie.
Twice in the movie.
Because I don't know if I watched the credits. Well, I did watch part of the credits. Okay.
I'm pretty sure it's...
All right.
And so this song now famously associated, I think, with Shrek. Mostly, but stuck in all of our minds ever since the late 90s.
Yep.
You can see that if you watch the film clip for... So the movie clip for All Star, it is a heavy Mystery Men element in it.
Right.
Yes.
Okay.
Oh, yes.
I didn't know that.
The lead singer goes around fighting sort of... I think he rescues a dog.
Yep.
And interestingly... lifts a bus.
Right.
Which is, of course, Mr. Furious's greatest feat.
Okay.
And there's a scene where they're riding in a limousine and the Mystery Men smash up the limousine that they're riding in. And it's all stock footage, incidentally, from the film.
Yeah.
None of these these serious actors appear in Smash Mouth's film clip.
Right.
They are just... they're often shown as... There are body doubles shooting them from behind wearing their costumes.
Got it, yeah.
Or they use stock footage from the film. This is a minor point.
Okay.
But for a while there, on Twitter, sort of about 5 or 6 years ago, you could summon the band on Twitter if you mentioned the song All Star disparagingly.
Oh.
So it's a bit like Bloody Mary or Candyman.
Yep, okay.
So you look in the mirror and say the name and summon them. So on Twitter, if you said... All Star, what a crappy song. It's only famous because of Shrek.
Okay.
The band's official Twitter would tweet back at you.
Right.
Saying, actually, it was a number 1 in 1999 and appeared in the film Mystery Men. And we had a number 1 hit before that in 1997 with another song.
Okay.
and there's a hilarious article on the internet where it's just listed the dozens of times people have talked, like random people, nobodies, have talked trash about All Star, and the band's official Twitter has leapt to their own defense.
Okay.
It's a little pop culture fact for you. And they say to this day, if you dare mention All Star on Twitter, you may summon the spirit.
I wonder what would happen on
Smash
current
Mouth.
Twitter, because it's definitely not like it was back in the Smash Mouth defense days, probably. Postscript, The Boys. Is the Garth Ennis' Boys, that series on Amazon is probably the parody of the Marvel cycle that we couldn't think of. That we couldn't think of. But I haven't watched a single episode of that, so... But as far as my understanding of it is, yeah.